Hey everyone, welcome to the Property Podcast. I'm Rob B with Rob D, and it's the market update episode. It's a super popular episode where we bring you up to speed on all things property. Of course, we'll cover the marketing boom. We've also got great news for landlords with leaseholds, and we're going to cover a news story, which is absolutely massive in terms of the impact it'll have on your wealth, but yet it's hardly got any headlines at all.
Welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning property investors come to be informed and inspired. So many stories coming up in this market update that you need to know about. So make sure you keep listening and stick around to the end, because in Hub Extra, I'm sharing a new podcast that I've discovered, which is the best thing I've listened to in a long, long time.
Before we kick off with our first news story, we've got a bit of news ourselves. The Property Hub magazine will be landing on doorsteps any day now. You subscribers, you're in for a real treat. This issue looks absolutely fantastic. Now, if you're listening to this and going, wait a minute, I'm going to miss out on that wonderful experience, well then, we've got you covered. We've got a code you can use that when you subscribe to the magazine, if you enter this code on the website, then you will get that magazine for free. Wowzers, you lucky things. So if you want to take advantage of that offer, if you're not a subscriber already, then go to propertyhub.net/magazine and enter the code in caps, special offer 29. That's special offer, all one word, 29. Again, no spaces. Type that in and you too will get this magazine. And you won't even have to pay for that one. Wow. And remember, once the magazine lands on your doorstep, we love seeing it on the socials, whether you use Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook, wherever you prefer, but however you're enjoying it, take a pic, share it, and we'll probably share it too.
It's market update time. Yes, another month has gone by. Hard to believe that we are now at the beginning of July. 6 months since Christmas. How did that happen? This year has been so weird in terms of time. But we have had another month of property, and that means we are bringing you everything that you need to know. So keep on listening, because we're going to cover topics like licensing, leasehold news, arrears, evictions, and inflation. But we're going to start, as we always do, Rob, with the big picture. What is happening in the property market in general this month? And the answer, as it has been for the last few months now, is house prices are hitting record highs. So our first story is from The Guardian. The headline is house asking prices hit record levels across Great Britain. The average price of properties coming to market has risen by 0.8% in a month to reach over £336,000. That is the biggest June increase since 2015. So very much a continuation of a trend that we've been talking about for a while now.
We have, and this article appears in The Guardian, and the mainstream news outlets now are reporting on the strength of the property market, something that we've been talking for a little bit longer about. And, it's understandable that it's not front and centre of the news. There are a few other bits and pieces happening in the world right now that are getting our attention. But even so, it is hard to ignore the pace and strength and growth of the property market right now. And for those who are active in this market, then you're really noticing it. It's interesting because if you are not participating in property right now, you're not buying or selling your own home, or you're not investing, then chances are, if you didn't listen to this podcast, you might not be aware that a property boom is going on. It's only when you get involved that you realise, wow, there's a lot of people here buying. And that's the point. While the media is reporting on this, and it is getting some attention now, I don't think across the country everybody understands the strength of the property market right now. And when that happens, I think it'll only strengthen the market further, because people will then start to get greedy or fearful that, wait a minute, I can have a piece of this, or fearful, hey, I'm going to miss out on having a piece of this. Whatever the emotion, that will drive people to get involved. It's going to be really interesting to see it over the coming months, how things play out. And a lot of commentators have said that when the incentives around stamp duty end, so will surge. Well, I'm not convinced. I think this is too strong of a run. And our second news story, which comes from Today's Conveyancer, feels like a segment from Have I Got News For You, but it isn't. It's a real website with a real headline. And the headline reads, biggest sales pipeline in a decade and buyers undeterred by stamp duty holiday ending.
Well, yeah, I think Today's Conveyancer will be having a little lie down and breathing a sigh of relief, because they've managed to get through the first part of the stamp duty holiday ending, which is at the end of June. So if you were trying to hit that date for one of your own purchases, I hope you managed to. But that respite for conveyances is only going to be temporary because there are over 700,000 sales currently going through, according to this article, which is the highest number in over a decade. And those transactions are not primarily driven by stamp duty. So only 29% said that they expected to complete in time to make use of the stamp duty holiday. And only 4% said that they would abandon their plans to make the transaction completely if they missed either the June deadline, which is passed, or the September deadline, which is where stamp duty finally goes back to where it was before the pandemic. And that makes sense because really, who makes life decisions and investment decisions based purely on a slight change in stamp duty? It's not going to happen. It will, of course, bring some demand forward because if you're planning to do something anyway, then you'll choose to do it now rather than in 6 months' time. But it's not going to be the primary reason for anyone deciding to move house. But actually, I think the passing of the June deadline is good news for anyone who's trying to get a transaction through at the moment who's not that bothered about the stamp duty, because for the last few weeks trying to get hold of a conveyancer has been impossible because they've been under so much pressure. And I've experienced it from a transaction that I'm making. I've heard it from other people as well. They're basically having to prioritize the people who really cared about hitting the deadline and who had a chance of hitting the deadline and just let everything else sit because conveyancers have been under so much pressure. Hopefully there'll now be a window where they can catch up on some of this backlog before September starts rolling around and people are trying to hit that deadline instead. But because of that huge volume of transactions, it has been so busy recently.
An interesting take on the same data from Rightmove we opened with is a headline in Estate Agent today, which says stamp duty frenzy shows first sign of slowing. And Rightmove, beyond reporting the 0.8% rise in asking prices over the last month, have also said that the pent-up demand is still there, but not quite as much as there has been. Now, they're putting this down to stamp duty, and that might be the reason. I think it's speculation on why it's a slowdown, but at some point it will have to ease a little bit. If it doesn't ease and the current momentum carries on, then property prices are going to be growing by 25% a year. So it's no surprise that the momentum may ease. That doesn't mean that property prices are going to stop growing. Far from it. There's still pent-up demand. But it accelerating further and further, well, that's going to come to a stop at some point. And it needs to. As much as you think you do, you don't want property prices growing 25% a year. It'll be absolutely carnage. So even growth of double digit is massive. So it will start to ease, and it might not feel as crazy if you're active in the market later in the year. Here's hoping anyway, because it is very crazy out there right now. But Rob, that leads into our next story, which helps us see that while it might be crazy in the UK, we're not alone, because the FT is reporting that house prices around the globe are accelerating. Yes, there are some countries that aren't kicking on, but actually the UK, as much as you'd think it would be right now, the leader, the country with the highest price growth in terms of property prices, it's not. It's up there, but there are plenty of countries having even stronger surges and bigger booms than the UK.
Yeah, I was really surprised by this because I knew that it was happening in other countries as well. But the UK is currently being outpaced in terms of house price growth by Sweden, Denmark, Russia, the US, Korea, Canada, Germany, and the Netherlands. And then ranking just below the UK, but still lots of growth going on in places like Taiwan, Brazil, France, China's there as well. So house prices, and you can probably extrapolate to asset prices in general, are just going mad everywhere. For me, this really shows that there is something universal going on. It shows that this is not to do with stamp duty. I don't think anyone's suggesting that this whole boom is caused by the stamp duty holiday, but this clearly shows that that's not what it's all about, because many of these countries don't have anything like that in place, but the market is going mad everywhere. And my guess, Rob, and it is only a guess because no one really knows why this is happening in all these different countries, would be that it's because of two universal factors that are in place across all these countries. One being the psychological factor. Everyone's been through a similar experience in terms of being locked down and having to reevaluate what they want in their home. And the other being central bank policy. The fact that interest rates are so low, the fact that so much money has been printed. Not the case in every country, but the case in most of the countries, I would say, that I've just listed. And it seems likely that that is the largest factor behind what we're seeing, not across the globe, but across large parts of it.
Absolutely. It's definitely both factors at play. At what level is each making the impact? It's hard to say. I would actually say the latter is probably the biggest driver behind property prices right now. But the former is the trigger that's created all that stimulus, and that's partly been behind all that stimulus and got people, up and running and buying assets. Now, while this all sounds a bit crazy, this is not new territory. Again, we talk about the last cycle so often, but this is why we talk about it. You can see patterns. Last time around, the last 18-year property cycle, this happened. There were numerous countries around the globe that were booming. It wasn't just the UK, the USA, the UAE, most of Europe. The list goes on. All across the world, in the last cycle, property prices boomed. They all went up really high together, and they all crashed together as well. So if this is your kind of first cycle as an adult, this probably feels all a bit mad. It is a bit mad, but it's madness that we've seen before, and probably will see again in the future as well. But by understanding the 18-year property cycle, and we talk about that a lot, and there's a course on the website that you can access for free. We've done loads of YouTube videos and podcasts on the subject. By understanding it, it gives you confidence to invest in this market. And it feels just a little less crazy. So if by some miracle you've been listening to this podcast and you still don't know what the 18-year property cycle is, stop, come back to this episode shortly, and go and listen and learn and understand what the 18-year property cycle is, because you'll become a far better investor off the back of it. Now, while it may feel a bit crazy to you and us, it also feels a bit crazy for the Bank of England as well, because another article from The Guardian says UK housing market is on fire, warns Bank of England chief economist. Rob, no arguments there, but I'm sure he's raising that note as not a note of excitement, but concern.
Yeah, this is Andy Haldane, who's the chief economist at the Bank of England. He's leaving the Bank of England to go to another role, so he's been doing various interviews around the place. And you get the impression that he's not delighted with some of the policies that are in place, not just at the Bank of England, because most central banks are doing the same thing at the moment. But he's warning about the rise in house prices, which he puts down to increased savings from richer households as a result of COVID, which is definitely the case, but also ultra low interest rates. He says that this is contributing significantly to inequality, which I think it undoubtedly is. We're not just talking about property, because as we've talked about in the past on the podcast, any holders of assets over the last year have done exceptionally well. And for anyone without assets, well, you've just missed out on some really great growth and things got further out of reach. And your home, of course, is not just an asset. It's somewhere that you live, and therefore it's far more important to even more people. But I thought it was interesting that he'd linked this warning to central bank policies, which we've talked about a lot, and it does get spoken about, but not as much as you might think. There's a lot of talk about stamp duty, a lot of talk about supply and demand and things like that. But the factor that underpins all of it are things like QE and interest rates that tend to get a bit overlooked as a factor behind house price growth. But it seems, Rob, that his colleagues at the Bank of England are a bit more relaxed about this kind of thing, because our next story is from Money Week, and it says, inflation is coming, says the Bank of England, but don't expect us to react. This is the news that the Bank of England expects inflation to get above 3%, but they still don't plan to raise interest rates.
Arguably, this is this month's biggest news story for me, because this is huge. This is absolutely huge. What's really interesting is the subheadline to this article. It says, the Bank of England is confident we'll see inflation, but it said it's going to keep interest rates where they are and carry on printing money. Wow. So not only are they going to ignore inflation, they're going to keep fueling the fire that's going to create it. At some point, they cannot ignore it. If they carry on doing what they're doing, it will go not just beyond 3%, but 4%, and possibly beyond further, if depending on how much stimulus they introduce. Now, that will have an impact on a couple of different levels for property investors. Asset prices will accelerate further, property and non-property assets, and it will really kick on. With property, you can leverage, and by leveraging, you can take advantage of that asset growth as well. But inflation will then start to erode that debt, and inflation has been so low for so many years now. So if it does start getting close to 4%, your debt is being eroded at a reasonable rate, while your asset prices are accelerating. It's the perfect storm for wealth creation. Now, this, as Rob has said, creates an imbalance, and we're not celebrating this, but we're making you aware of these concepts for years and years and years, because actually there is an imbalance and there is a lack of financial education out there. But at least if we do our part and explain what's happening and how it will make people wealthier and unfortunately people poorer, then if you have the ability to get on the wealth side and take action, then we've done our job. We've helped a few people out. Unfortunately, there'll be some people who listen to this and at the moment just can't take any action at all. And that is massively unfortunate. And unfortunately, for those people, if they can't get in soon, the wealth divide is only going to be exaggerated further between the haves and the have-nots. Now, this is an episode that we've kind of discussed on many levels before, and we're going to talk about inflation in a coming episode in the not too distant future. Because actually, while it sounds pretty dull and you normally think about your bread and your pints of beer going up in price, inflation has a huge impact on everyone's wealth and a huge impact on property investors. So it's something that you absolutely need to understand.
So that is the big picture, so important to understand as an investor. And that's why we start with the big picture in every market update. But you need to know what's going on back down at ground level as well. So let's have a look at some of the other big news stories from the month. A couple in terms of evictions. So the different parts of the UK have set different roadmaps out of the restrictions that have been in place around evictions as a result of COVID. So in England, the notice period for evictions is now down to 4 months. And the plan is for it to go back down to its original 2 months again in, I think it's September, could be the end of September. Not so in Wales, where the government has just extended the 6-month notice requirement until September. So not good news for landlords in Wales who've got a tenant who's in arrears or anything like that, because that lengthy notice period has now been extended again. Similar news in Scotland, where in certain areas, depending on the restrictions that are in place, the ban on evictions has been extended until September, the end of September, and the emergency laws are being extended until the end of September next year, which could include evictions. So still unclear about exactly what's going to happen up in Scotland, but certainly not good news for landlords. However, Rob, there has been some good news this month for leaseholders, or some leaseholders anyway.
Yeah, there's been a lot of campaigning, and rightly so, around leaseholds and the unfairness around some of the practices that are in place. One that some of you listening may be aware of is the doubling of ground rent every 10 years. So it starts off reasonably enough at £200, but then you start doubling it. After a few decades, it becomes a big number, and it makes it hard to mortgage and therefore sell those properties. So the watchdog responsible for looking into the leasehold scandal, as it's often been referred to, is taking a, you could say, slow and steady approach to this. And apparently, according to this article in the BBC, is encouraging the big players to make changes themselves without the need to go to court. And 2 of those big players have made changes. Persimmon Homes, one of the largest home builders in the UK, has said that it will allow its leaseholders to buy the freehold at a discount. Doesn't say what that discount will be, but it does say they'll be able to buy it at a discount. And Aviva, which owns 10% of leases that see ground rent doubling, so that's a lot of leases, has said that it will refund all those leaseholders what they've been charged for the doubling of the ground rent and put an end to that practice, which is fantastic news. That's really, really good to see. That now will make those properties mortgageable again and put a few quid in quite a few people's pockets as well. Often landlords investors can be done over in different ways from different parties, and it always seems to be one-way traffic. Well, a little reversal today in this piece of news, and pleasing to see, and we need to see more of it.
Definitely. Good news there. A couple of bits of news this month as well in the realm of licensing. So the first story is from Landlord Zone, and it says Airbnb calls for National Shortlets Landlord Register. So this is suggesting that people who operate holiday lets should have a registration number from the government or another authority in order to list their homes on a short-term lettings platform. You may think, hang on a minute, why would Airbnb be calling for that? That sounds kind of contrary to their interests. Well, sceptical me may think, well, if they get ahead of things and suggest what the legislation should be themselves and look proactive, and they suggest something pretty light touch and that gets taken on, that's better than sitting back and waiting for the government to come up with its own ideas for what to do, which may be far worse for them. But in any case, what they are proposing seems pretty fair enough to me. They have a similar system in other countries and doesn't seem too unreasonable. So we'll wait and see where that goes. But also in the realm of licensing, really interesting this one, Rob. We hear a lot about new landlord licensing schemes. Every month there's at least one new council with a consultation to bring out a new one. And again, sceptical me tends to think that it's just a money-raising exercise. However, this month the island of Jersey has announced a licensing scheme, but this scheme will be free for landlords to join. I think they've completely missed the point of what this is all about.
Oh, they've just got that much money over there that they don't care. I don't know. What should we do? Oh, let's just set up landlord licensing. How much should we charge? Nothing. We've got enough. And then the regulator puts down his gold pen. Yeah, lovely to see. Not many of us will benefit from that. I don't have a large portfolio in Jersey, unfortunately. And if you do, well, congratulations. You've just saved yourself a few quid. You've got a bit more admin to do like we all have, but at least it's not costing you to do that admin. I'd like to say it might be the start of a trend, but I'm not optimistic. We shall see.
No, that whole no tax thing hasn't really caught on in general, has it? So I don't think this will either.
No, I don't think it will. Now, Rob, we're coming to the end of our stories here, but there's a lot covered this month. We could, if we wanted to, done a whole news roundup, a whole episode on Bitcoin and everything that's been happening there. So many news stories, so much controversy, so much happening. Now, for you property purists, don't worry. We're not going to do that. But just a note to say that in the past month, we've had 2 episodes on Bitcoin, and they've been well received. There's been lots of commentary around them. We've had lots of emails in about them. We've also had a few people annoyed that we covered the subject as well, which is quite interesting. But I just think that makes it more interesting, but that it stokes so much emotion in so many people. With there being so much noise around Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies right now, I think having knowledge and understanding what's happening, whether you're investing or not, is a must. Because if an asset gets so much attention and you don't understand what it is and how it works, then you're being left in the dark. You might be missing an opportunity, or you might be heading for a big pitfall if you decide to dabble and you don't know what you're doing. So go and check those 2 episodes out. Away from property, but an important asset class to understand.
So time now for Hub Extra. It's that part of the show where we give you a little bit more, whether it's a resource, a book, a quote, a hack, something that'll make your life a little bit better. And it's backed up with the newsletter that Property Hub members get in their inbox every single Friday. This week's Hub Extra is a podcast, another podcast that I've already excitably messaged Rob about during the week, because when I discovered this one, I knew it would be right up his street. It's called Exit Scam. We'll link to it in the show notes. You may remember that back last year, we talked about a podcast called The Missing Crypto Queen on the BBC, which was about somebody who set up basically a fraudulent cryptocurrency. This is very similar in terms of its theme. It's about somebody who set up a crypto exchange, died under mysterious circumstances, and may in fact have faked his own death. And this podcast is trying to get to the bottom of what really happened. It's so good. I've blasted through all the episodes in a couple of days. So if you enjoy The Missing Crypto Queen, if you're interested in cryptocurrency, or if you just like a good mystery, that podcast, well worth checking out.
Yep, that's on my download list, and I'll be working my way through that this week. Thank you, Rob. And thank you for listening. We'll be back, of course, next Thursday with the Property Podcast. But before then, we'll be back with Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. And if you're not fed up with us by then, you can check out our other podcast on a completely different feed called Any Other Business. Search for that in your podcast app, and you can listen along to our business escapades and our views on all things business. So plenty to keep you busy with. We'll catch up with you soon. Take care. Have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.